that really hit the airwaves on the socials and stirred up a lot of people, good or bad. A lot of people were giving Brian Kelly shit for the things he said. And he essentially just said that, like, we're not in the business. For full context, I think it got taken out of context a little bit. What Brian Kelly was saying was that they're not in the business for getting in a bidding war, was the way I interpreted it. That they got NIL money at LSU. Their boosters, what have you, are willing to front with it, what is needed. Obviously, if you know anything about college football, you know that LSU has one of the most dedicated alumni and fan bases in the country. And anybody that does have money out there for sure will be willing to put it up to get a player that will help the LSU Tigers win some games. That said, he's painting the picture that maybe that player was out of his price range, and he doesn't want a guy that's not a part of the program coming in and essentially looking to get paid. I think that what he's saying is that LSU in itself as a program offers enough benefits and advantages that, like, money shouldn't come first, and that you're playing for the long money, the NFL money, and that him as a coach has produced players and developed them into NFL players before without paying them money, and he's going to continue to do so at LSU without paying them money, which I think is a fair point. But the question I would ask is, one, do you think that the exception should be made for a guy like Dominic Williams when LSU desperately, they're paper thin on the interior D-line, and they had a humiliating season defensively last year, and quite frankly, it looks like they're going to get run through again this year. And that's not it. Just looking at the roster, I don't see where you think, outside of coaching changes, that there's a dramatic improvement on what happened, and that's scary, and you can't have that again. So there's the balance of, like, understanding the context of what Kelly was saying, and I could agree with it, and yet there might be times that you need to make an exception because the need is that strong. And the player's no slouch. He was a freshman All-American. He's been very productive in his career, and there's a reason that he was a hot commodity.
Yeah, dude, I completely agree with all of that because, like you were saying, obviously NIL is an important factor within college football. It's, super prevalent to building and developing your roster, especially if you're stacking classes. Your 80% of your roster is, top 5 classes, from years and years out. But at the end of the day, there is need. For example, we can use Texas as an example, right? You guys lose Xavier Worthy, Jordan Whittington, and Adonai Mitchell to the NFL draft. You immediately reload. You get Golden. You get his name's Silas Bolden. Yeah, Silas Bolden, and you also get Isaiah Bond immediately. Obviously, you guys have been recruiting exceptionally well at receiver, but those guys are still unproven and they're young. So you got to go into the portal. You got to go reload. Same thing with Oklahoma. You go into the portal. You get key pieces. Either in the secondary, little pieces here. You get a receiver like Deion Burks to come replace Drake Stoops. You gotta supplement your roster by getting pieces here and there. Now, however, you could be on the other end of the spectrum, like an Ole Miss, which I think they're recruiting, decent, but the fact that they're kind of all in right now, and it's obvious the way they're attacking the portal. They're putting all their chips into play because they're going all in this season. They think they have the roster and the team to go all the way. And also, you also have Ohio State, kind of same thing. They're able to retain a lot of their guys, but they're also able to get key pieces from the portal, like a Judkins, et cetera, like a Caleb Downs, to add those little additional foundational pieces to their team and to their roster. Now, as you're saying about LSU, offense is going to be really good. They have a really good quarterback there. With I think his name's like Brent
Nussmeier.
Yeah,
his dad used to be the quarterback coach of the Cowboys.
Okay, yeah. So, and he's going to be a stud. I think that kid is super talented. And obviously LSU always has elite weapons on the perimeter.
Yeah.
But like you were saying, their defense was already bad last year. The fact that now your line of scrimmage play is probably in the bottom tier of the SEC, like I would say there's a ton of teams that just have better line. But obviously LSU has a great offensive line, but their defensive line is so bad and so poor, and that's where it starts up front. You have players like Harold Perkins and things like that on the defense. But however, if he can't really impact the game how he's going to want to. Plus, they played him in the wrong spots. They had him playing.
That's what I was saying.
Like outside linebacker.
It's off brand for LSU to not be elite defensively and not be producing guys, especially up front, NFL football players. Yeah. And when you're coming off the year that you have last year, Brian Kelly obviously is getting the benefit of the doubt from the fan base and from, I think, national media, if you will, and he should. Brian Kelly's resume is not to joke about or sneeze at. He's won everywhere he's been. He's developed NFL players everywhere he's been, and that should be acknowledged. And yet, you're in the baddest conference in the land, and when it comes to this competitive space of NIL and recruiting, it doesn't get any bigger than it is in the SEC. You mentioned the Ole Miss of the world, that's pretty much a full NIL approach, and then there's the superpowers of your Georgias, your Bamas, your Texases that have the healthy balance, and I think that he's almost giving this above reproach example, speaking on our program is established to the point, and LSU has more resources and built-in resources than almost anybody in the country. It's going to be one of the most sought-after jobs forever in college football. I think it's one of the best jobs in America. If Brian Kelly doesn't work out, there will be people beating down the doors to coach at LSU just because, let alone with the homegrown talent that you're going to get automatically, with that basically being the NFL team there. The Saints were bad for decades and decades and decades. LSU, if you've been in the area, is the team amongst all of them. You can include all the Louisiana pro sports teams. Nobody's touching LSU and the popularity and love that those people have for the program. So with that alone, it's going to be fantastic. But you're going up against some big, bad football teams. And if you repeat what you did last year, Brian Kelly's goofy ass is going to be on the hot seat. And that's where I could look at what he said. It'd be like people are tripping and taking what he said out of context. You shouldn't just throw money out there. You should have principles, and you got to establish your culture and keep your money in-house, if you will. Make sure that's spread out in-house before it's spread out-house. But at the same time, you have such a pressing need that there's sometimes exceptions to your rule. And I worry that this should have been an exception to the rule at LSU. Like you said, offensively, I believe in the Nuss Bus. I think that they're way too talented. They got way too much talent to just be bad. They might take a step back. You don't got Mike Vick, Madden 04 coming back like you did last year. But still, I think they'll be good offensively. But if you're paper thin on the interior defensive line, good luck beating the top dogs in the SEC. It's a super conference, man, and it's all about big humans and NFL players on the interior offensive and defensive lines.
100%. 100%. And keeping it within